Iceman may be an iconic character, but at first, Val Kilmer hated playing him. The actor may seem to have it all when he's playing a part on the big screen, but the personal story of Val Kilmer has often been a tragic one. Val Kilmer and his two brothers, one older and one just a year younger, were raised by their parents together until Val was 9 years old. Then, in 1968, the Kilmers divorced. Following the split, the three sons went to live with their father. Val never really got over the divorce. Despite living with his dad, Val described becoming distant from his father and at times generally despondent, telling The Telegraph, "I was quiet, more contemplative than outgoing, and things didn't go well between me and my father for a very long time." When Kilmer's father passed away in the mid-1990s, he and his older brother Mark would end up clashing badly as they tried to settle their late father's affairs. Perhaps the only good that came of the divorce was that shortly after his parents separated, Val began to show an active interest in drama, taking classes perhaps as a way to use acting to escape the challenges of his real life. According to a 1999 interview while promoting the film At First Sight, Kilmer noted that his struggles with his art started at a very young age. The actor didn't land the first part he tried out for, but it wasn't because he was not up to the job. Instead, Kilmer didn't land the part because he just couldn't bring himself to commit to it. Kilmer, a noted method actor, said that he walked off the set of a hamburger commercial because he simply couldn't convince himself to believe in the burgers. As Kilmer noted in the interview, he found that if he didn't believe what his character was saying, he couldn't play the part. Of course, this was a hamburger commercial, and Val Kilmer was 12 years old at the time, but with a few years of drama classes already under his belt and a clear sense of himself as an actor, he just couldn't nail the performance. As a result, he failed to land the coveted role of the kid in the burger commercial. When Val Kilmer was just 17 years old, a truly terrible tragedy struck his family. His younger brother Wesley, who was 16 years old, died in a shocking accident. Wesley had epilepsy and happened to experience a seizing fit while he was in a swimming pool. The teenager died by drowning, leaving Val heartbroken. Though clearly a more major trauma than his parents' divorce 8 years earlier, it was another example of loss in Val Kilmer's young life. Val managed to pull himself together, though, and that same year entered the esteemed drama program at the Juilliard School in New York City, becoming the youngest person ever accepted into the school at the time. He was still more than half a decade away from any meaningful success on the stage or the screen, but Val Kilmer was well on his way. Val Kilmer and actress Joanne Whalley got to know each other and fell in love while working together on the Ron Howard-helmed action-adventure movie Willow, which came out in 1988. The pair married and had 2 children, a daughter named Mercedes and a son named Jack. However, their love story was not to be long-lived and would end quite badly. The pair divorced in 1996, and the split did not go well. Whalley long suspected Kilmer of infidelity, and according to the British tabloid The Daily Mail, he reportedly was courting world-famous supermodel Cindy Crawford. Kilmer and Crawford did later have a public relationship for a time, as his marriage to Whalley was falling apart. Kilmer would later say that part of what doomed the relationship with his ex-wife was his full commitment to the role of Jim Morrison in Oliver Stone's The Doors. Kilmer admitted to spending the better part of a year essentially acting as if he were the troubled rocker out of a devotion to method acting.
What is wrong with being a large mammal? A big beast, like a tank.
Whalley had divorce papers served to Kilmer while he was on the set of The Island of Dr. Moreau. That film was directed by John Frankenheimer, one of many in Hollywood who would later claim he hated working with Kilmer. Frankenheimer would later tell the Orlando Sentinel, "I will never climb Mount Everest, and I will never work with Val Kilmer again. There isn't enough money in the world." John Frankenheimer was not the only person who openly hated working with Val Kilmer, not by a long shot. In fact, Kilmer managed to develop a reputation as one of the worst actors to work with in the entire American film industry. In 1996, Entertainment Weekly published an article with the headline, "Val Kilmer Makes Enemies in Hollywood," which included the line, "Many in Hollywood are loath to work with Kilmer, no matter how big the box office payback." Remember that in 1996, Kilmer had already lit up screens in one of the finest crime thrillers of the modern era, Heat. He had also played one of the most famous characters of all time, Batman, in Batman Forever. And of course, he had been Iceman in the worldwide hit Top Gun.
You can be my wingman anytime.
Kilmer was still earning multiple millions of dollars, but his reputation for being difficult on set surely cost him plenty of opportunities. A sad irony is that it's possible that his interpersonal issues were caused by his efforts to go all out on any given project. By fully committing to his craft, it seems he wasn't able to be a decent person to the people around him off-screen. In the documentary Val, Kilmer acknowledged his own troubled past, saying, "I have behaved poorly. I have behaved bravely, bizarrely to some. I see myself as a sensitive, intelligent human being, but with the soul of a clown." Although toned and taut as Iceman in 1986, by the late 2000s, Val Kilmer was middle-aged and quite overweight, and the tabloids and papers took cruel notice. In 2007, the Daily Mail ran a juvenile and degrading headline that read, "Val Kilmer goes from Batman to Fat Man." Kilmer would start to turn his physical health around a few years later, apparently beginning to take long walks on the beach near his Malibu, California home and adopting a healthier diet. By the middle of the next decade, his weight loss efforts had seemingly been a success. But of course, many in the media couldn't resist adding subtle barbs from the other end of the spectrum. So the new slimmer Kilmer was often described in very different but also unflattering terms. For instance, in December of 2014, the Daily Mail ran another insulting headline that read, "Gaunt Val Kilmer reveals dramatically shrinking frame while shopping at Levi's in Malibu." Harsh words about a 55-year-old man who had managed to slim back down to a healthy weight. Obviously, relationships ending was never really anything new for Val Kilmer, starting back with his parents splitting up before he was even in middle school. And then there was the relationship he had with Cher in the 1980s. She was 13 years his senior and already a world-famous star, while he was just starting his ascent to fame. Kilmer would say of Cher in his memoir, "I'm Your Huckleberry," once Cher works her way inside your head and heart, she never leaves. For her true friends, her steadfast love and loyalty never die. One very notable breakup was with Val Kilmer's ex-wife and mother of his children, Joanne Whalley, but the actor described his most painful breakup ever as the end of a brief relationship with actress Daryl Hannah. The pair became close while working on the film Hard Cash, and would spend quite a bit of time alone in intimate privacy at his New Mexico property. In his book, I'm Your Huckleberry, Kilmer would write this about Hannah: "Lord knows I've suffered heartache, but Daryl was by far the most painful of all. Neil Young, I always loved you, but I'm afraid I hate you now." Why did Kilmer reference Neil Young? Well, in 2018, Hannah married the legendary singer. It's now very public knowledge that Val Kilmer fought off nearly fatal throat cancer and in the process forever lost his voice. Kilmer's voice was one of the aspects of him that was so recognizable and even iconic, not to mention indispensable for roles like Jim Morrison in The Doors. For several years, however, Kilmer kept his battle with cancer private. In 2017, however, Kilmer finally publicly admitted that he had fought and beaten cancer, first revealing it with a rather arcane choice of words used during a Reddit AMA with fans in which he said he did have a healing of cancer. That healing of cancer was actually 2 tracheotomies and chemotherapy that the actor endured over the course of about 2 years starting in 2015. That is seriously invasive, taxing stuff, and it speaks to the severity of the cancer Kilmer had to overcome. And in fact, even as recently as the summer of 2021, the actor described himself as still recovering. It's hard to imagine one of the biggest Hollywood stars of the past 4 decades as feeling lonely. Val Kilmer is a man who has had relationships with some of the most famous women of our day, who has worked with the biggest stars on the planet, and who has generally been in the public spotlight for most of his life. Yet, in his book, I'm Your Huckleberry, Kilmer writes, "I am lonely part of every day." He writes that he has not had a girlfriend in 2 decades, which has only exacerbated his loneliness. It also means he faced his cancer battle without a close romantic companion. Fortunately for Kilmer, it does seem that in those years he managed to develop a closer relationship with his children, who were instrumental in helping with the creation of the documentary Val. Val Kilmer became Jim Morrison. His acting was pitch perfect, and he embodied the ill-fated frontman to a T. And Kilmer loved working on the movie Heat, saying during a Reddit AMA session, "Well, imagine being able to say Al and Bob for the rest of your life. Not many people can do that. Priceless experience. Watching all the actors do their thing. Loved every minute of it. But Batman Forever?" Kilmer said he hated working on the film. describing himself as feeling like a puppet in a bat costume, according to the Daily Mail. And Kilmer initially hated the role of Iceman in Top Gun, writing in his memoir that he felt the script was silly. He even tried to botch his audition, adding, "I read the lines indifferently, and yet, amazingly, I was told I had the part. I felt more deflated than inflated." In 2021, the unique documentary Val was released by Amazon Studios. The film's description reads, Val Kilmer, one of Hollywood's most mercurial actors, has been documenting his life and craft through film. This raw and wildly original documentary reveals a life lived to extremes and a heart-filled look at what it means to be an artist. The film is an amalgamation of private footage and public footage over which the actor speaks about his life. Or at least it sounds that way, given the first-person use of language and the fact that the voice sounds just like Val Kilmer. But in fact, the person speaking is Kilmer's son, Jack, since the elder Kilmer's voice was lost to cancer. Jack and his sister, Mercedes, were instrumental in the production of Val, having helped sort through some 800 hours of footage their dad had available. Jack and Mercedes also appear prominently in the documentary and did a lot to promote the film that celebrated the life and legacy of their famous dad. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more grunge videos about your favorite actors are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.